Two taps run at once and neither one works properly. Someone starts the dishwasher downstairs and the shower upstairs goes thin. The bath fills slowly enough that you leave the room and come back to it. All of that gets called the same thing: low water pressure. That name is where the trouble starts. It describes one quantity and your house runs on two of them. They fail for different reasons and they call for entirely different fixes. A house can sit at completely normal pressure and still deliver a weak shower. In that situation, adding pressure achieves nothing at all. The cheap version of this fault sits in a screen you can unscrew with your fingers. The expensive version sits inside the supply pipe and takes a plumber. Nothing about standing in the shower tells you which one you have. 5 minutes with a gauge on the outside tap does, and the gauge itself costs very little. And wherever the fault turns out to be, it is on your side of the water meter. Only one of those two quantities is pressure. The second one is called flow, and it seldom comes up at all. The word pressure names a force. It describes how hard the water is being pushed along the pipe, and it gets measured in pounds per square inch. The word flow names a volume over time. It describes how much water actually comes out of the opening in a given minute, and it gets measured in gallons per minute. You have already seen the difference in the garden. Put your thumb across the end of a running hose, and the water shoots further across the lawn because the force at the opening goes up. The bucket you are filling takes longer because the volume getting through goes down. The same hose delivers more pressure and less flow at the same time. The Portland Water Bureau states this plainly in its own troubleshooting guidance. What seems like low pressure is sometimes actually low flow, and low flow can come from a clogged faucet, from old corroded pipes, or from other plumbing faults, even where the pressure is entirely normal. So a weak shower on its own does not tell you which of the two is short. All that it tells you is that you are unhappy with the shower. I will come back to what causes each of them, but first a quick word about myself and this channel. I'm Wade. This channel pulls apart what goes wrong in houses, and a fair number of those faults hide behind a single word that's quietly covering two different problems with two different bills. This one's about as clean an example as there is, because a homeowner can spend serious money raising a number that was never low. That's what this channel is for. What's actually wrong, what it actually means, and roughly what it actually costs. A booster pump raises pressure. That is its function, and where the supply pressure really is too low, it is the correct answer. The plumbing rules say so directly. The Minnesota rule states that where street main pressure will not provide the required flow pressure at the fixture outlets, a booster pump and pressure tank get installed. Note the condition attached to that. The supply pressure has to be insufficient in the first place. Where the pressure is already normal, the pump does something else. Something between the water main and the shower head is narrowing the path, and the pump pushes harder against the same narrowing. The problem in that case is not the force behind the water, it is the size of the opening the water has to pass through. The narrowing stays exactly where it was. The gauge reads higher, the shower improves less than you expected, and you now own a pump. The same error turns up elsewhere in the house. Fitting a larger air conditioner to a system with leaking ducts follows identical logic. The bottleneck was never the capacity of the unit, so more capacity does not clear it. Buying more of the thing that was never the constraint is an expensive habit. A booster pump is not a cheap item, and installing one is not a small job. Fitting one to a restricted house leaves you holding the restriction and the pump both. Pushing a house to higher pressure also loads every joint and fitting in it harder than before, which is a poor trade in older plumbing. Before you look at causes, sort the symptom. Check every tap in the house, hot and cold, and include the outside hose spigot. Portland splits the diagnosis 3 ways on exactly that basis, and the split does most of the work for you. If only the hot water is weak and the cold runs normally, the trouble sits on the hot side. Cleaning the screens on the hot taps and the shower head is yours to do. Anything involving the water heater itself belongs to a plumber, and I would leave it alone. If some fixtures run properly and others do not, the restriction is local to the fixtures that are struggling. Look at the screens on those taps, then at the small shutoff valves under the sink, which get left partway closed after work more often than anyone admits. If everything is weak, including the outside spigot, the restriction sits upstream of all of it. That is the whole house case, and it has a short list of usual causes. Start with the aerator screens because checking them costs nothing. The screen on the end of a tap collects mineral scale and grit out of the supply, and a loaded screen throttles that tap on its own. Unscrew it, rinse it, put it back. That is the entire repair. Look next at the main shutoff valve where the supply enters the house. A main shutoff that was closed for work and never fully reopened will throttle the whole house quietly for years afterwards. Where the main shutoff is an accessible handle, confirm it is all the way open. Where it is stiff or seized, leave it where it is and call a plumber, because an old valve that gets forced can end up leaking. Check the whole house filter if the house has one. The cartridge restricts more as it loads, which is exactly what a filter does. Changing that cartridge on schedule is ordinary maintenance and no great expense. Consider the pressure-reducing valve after that where one is fitted. These do fail, and one of the ways a pressure-reducing valve fails is by throttling the supply it was fitted to control. Portland's own advice for the whole house case is to check that the pressure-reducing valve or the whole house filter is still working. Finding it and identifying it is fine. Adjusting it is a plumber's job, and I am not going to tell you to turn it. That leaves the expensive one. Galvanized steel supply pipe corrodes from the inside, and that corrosion narrows the bore over decades until the pipe delivers a fraction of what it delivered when it was new. Portland names old corroded pipes directly as a cause of low flow at normal pressure. Nothing cleans that out. Repiping is the fix, and it is real work with a real bill attached. Where the house is old enough to have galvanized supply lines, this is the possibility to take seriously. Pressure runs too high in some houses, and that direction deserves more attention than it usually gets. The plumbing codes cap it. Most adopted codes call for a pressure-reducing valve, built to the recognized standard wherever one is needed to hold the pressure down. The limit those codes set is 80 pounds per square inch at any fixture, appliance, or outlet, measured with nothing running. Adopted editions vary by jurisdiction, so the figure where you live may not be 80. New York City works to 85. 80 is the number you will meet most often. Above that ceiling, the pipework, the fittings, and the small valves inside your appliances all carry more stress than the materials were selected for. The pressure-reducing valve has a second effect worth knowing about. It also stops water traveling back out towards the street, which turns the house into a closed system. Water expands as it heats, and in a closed system, that expansion has nowhere to go unless an expansion tank has been fitted to absorb it. Without an expansion tank, the temperature and pressure relief valve on the water heater becomes the only release in the building. Standard residential relief valves open at 150 pounds per square inch. The pressure inside a closed system can therefore climb a very long way past the 80 the code allows before anything lets go. That connects back to the water heater video. A relief valve that discharges every so often is worth mentioning to whoever comes out, and a closed system with no expansion tank is one of the reasons it happens. A pressure gauge from the hardware store settles this whole question, and the plumbing code assumes you are going to use one. In dwellings, permanent gauge ports are not required, provided there is a hose bib or a hose end drain valve that a test gauge can be connected to. The code takes your outside tap as the test point. The gauge threads straight onto the hose bib. Turn off everything in the house that uses water. Thread the gauge on, open the tap all the way, and read it. Take the reading twice, once in the evening and once early in the morning, because pressure moves with demand across the day and across the seasons. Portland manages its system to keep most homes between 40 and 80 pounds per square inch, though some homes receive more and some receive less, and the Bureau cannot adjust the pressure at an individual house. Most utilities work to a similar band. A reading between 40 and 80 in a house with a weak shower gives you your answer. The pressure is fine. The restriction is inside the house, which puts the aerator screens, the main shutoff, the filter cartridge, and the pressure-reducing valve on your list, in roughly that order. A reading below 40 points at pressure for real. That can be elevation because a house standing well above the local storage tank receives less than one down in the valley. It can be a leak in the service line. Call the utility and ask for the estimated static pressure at your address before you buy anything. Where a house genuinely sits below 40 because of where it stands, a booster pump becomes the right purchase rather than the wrong one. A reading above 80 is a code matter rather than a matter of preference. Have a plumber look at the pressure reducing valve or at fitting one and ask about the expansion tank while they are there. Go and put a gauge on the outside tap before you spend anything at all. You may have been describing the problem with the wrong word, and the wrong word leads you to the wrong purchase. This is one of the few faults in a house that you can settle definitively on your own in 5 minutes for almost nothing. And a fair share of the time, the answer turns out to be a screen full of grit. Tell me in the comments whether the weak fixture in your house is one tap or every tap, including the outside spigot. You already know which one it is, and it is the split this video just handed you. If this stopped you buying a pump you did not need, like the video and subscribe. I would rather you kept the money.